Welcome to Latter-day Miracles, where we share true stories of angels and marvels.
Get ready to enjoy accounts from everyday people that remind us of divine love, that we're never truly alone, and the power of faith in these latter days. I'm Haley Hatch Freeman.
And I'm Misty Smith. Sit back, open your heart, and prepare to be inspired.
Welcome to Latter-day Miracles. Today, I'm so excited to bring Abby Stevens. She has been a lifelong friend. I feel like our paths have crossed in the speaking world, the NSA world, and her message is one that has touched my heart, and I know it's going to touch yours too. This miracle story is one that's just undeniable. And I'm going to go ahead and read her intro since my beautiful co-host is sick today, and then we'll send the time over to Abby.
Thank you.
Okay, Abby Stevens was raised in Cokeville, Wyoming. She then attended BYU, where she was a musical dance theater major. She performed in the live theater in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. That sounds so fun. She was in other plays and musicals as well. After 2.5 years there, she decided to serve mission and was called to serve in the Florida Jacksonville mission. That's where she met her husband, Cole Stevens. They began dating when they returned home and planned to marry on June 28th of 1996. But just 1 week prior, on June 21st, they were in an accident that left Abby paralyzed from the neck down. We will let her go ahead and tell the rest of that miracle story. Abby is an inspirational speaker and entertainer. Abby has been sharing her story ever since then, inspiring others to endure through their own trials and challenges. She speaks in schools about safety and treating others with respect and kindness. She speaks to companies, businesses, associations, and other organizations about how to choose success and learn how to laugh through life's toughest moments. Abby is currently writing a book about her life, and I can't wait to read that. That's going to be amazing. And she released her first Christmas album in 2015. And I have that album and I pull it out every Christmas. She has a beautiful, beautiful voice.
Oh, you're nice.
Abby and Cole live in Kaysville, Utah, and have 4 children, Caleb, Haley, and in an ironic twist, the one-armed mom has twins, Carly and Alexa. The 2 oldest kids were both married in the last 3 years, and she can't wait to be a grandma, even though she's not nearly old enough. I agree, not old enough to be a grandma. Abby has held many church callings and was recently called to be an education specialist and mentor in the Kaysville YSA ward, while her husband is serving in the bishopric there. Being a wife and mother has been and continues to be the source of her greatest joy. And I'm excited to turn the time over to Abby.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, and I was excited to hear from you when you reached out to invite me on. Your story too, Haley. I have your book, and so inspiring, and you're just a light, and so I appreciate. I love that you're doing this. This is a great platform. So,
And a fun little connection I think the audience will enjoy because I have so many listeners from Millard County and Scipio, our little tiny town there. And I think they're going to find this kind of fun. One of the families that I grew up with in Scipio were the Boyer family. And one of them was Jason Boyer. And of course, I hung out with the sisters, the Sarah Boyer and Melody Boyer and all of them. But you have a fun little connection with Jason Boyer. I think everyone will think this is fun.
yeah. So I don't remember exactly when they moved to Cokeville. I was already gone because he's younger, but he dated my sister in high school. When he moved there, they started dating, and now they're married. So my little baby sister married Jason. We knew him as Buck.
Yes,
for
we
a
did
long
too.
time.
Yep.
He went
Buck,
apparently
Buck,
went
Buck.
by Buck growing up because there were 2 Jasons in his class or something, and so that's how the Buck is his middle name, and that's how they differentiated them. So, I guess sometimes he goes by both in our family.
Yep.
Sometimes we say Jason, sometimes we say Buck.
Yep.
So,
Same. Yeah,
yeah.
that's how we know him too. So I thought that was just a fun, small world
Yeah.
story that I think our audience will like because I do have a lot of listeners from Millard and Scipio and those connections. I thought they might like that.
And it is fun. And being from a small town, because I am
Right.
too,
Everybody knows everybody.
everybody knows everybody. And for whatever reason, I guess probably because there are just so few people, then when you play the who do you know game out in the world, there's
Uh-huh.
just not very many people. So if someone knows someone from your small town, you absolutely are going to know who they are, right?
Right.
So anytime I mention Cokeville, somebody's like, "Oh, do you know?" And I'm like, "Yes, they do." And there's this connection and that connection. But yeah, it's just funny how many small world connections there are to
Yep.
our little towns. So
Yeah.
fun.
Absolutely.
So, and in fact, I can kind of take it from there because that's kind of a part of my story. Um, of course, there is the whole Cokeville Miracle,
Yeah.
the movie, uh, and it's not just a movie; it's a true story. Which,
Mhm.
which my little brother was in 4th grade when that happened. That's where I grew up, so I remember that vividly. Of course, everybody does because it is a small town and it's the only elementary school. There's just not very many people, and so when people ask, um, if I say I'm from Cokeville, "Oh, did you know anybody in that school?" And I'm like, "Well, here's the thing. It's the only elementary school." And yes, everybody knows everybody when the population is 550-ish
Yeah.
for the whole town. And then there's lots of cousins. I had like 7 cousins in the school at the time. So,
Wow.
it's just definitely a connection there. But it was a miracle. And that's kind of, I mean, it is, I say kind of, but it actually is just a really strong part of obviously a huge experience in my life and all of those there that lived there went through. I wasn't in the school, I was in 7th grade. But then having my little brother over in there and just everybody had their own experience relating to it, whether they were in there or had siblings in there. But uh, it was just obviously one of those really big things that affects you deeply. And in many ways, it can, you know, affect you emotionally in many different ways. But we prayed for a miracle, and I believe it was one of the first. It was one of the first big experiences where I knew our prayers were answered. I knew miracles happened. I watched it. I witnessed it, right? So it just really added to what I already had was a pretty good foundation, having grown up in the church, um, a member, and, just never really had any other faith or belief system. So I did believe. I believed in prayer, in miracles. I watched it. And so I knew it could happen. And that just solidified what I already knew. We have these experiences that they each just kind of build on each other, and add to that strength of our foundation. So that is actually where we were headed the day that we crashed. And
Oh, wow.
so like my introduction said, I met my now husband. And at the time we weren't married yet. It was a week before our wedding. So his name's Cole. And so instead of being like my fiance at this point, my husband now, I'm just going to say Cole, and you'll know that's who it is. We met as missionaries. Obviously, there was no dating on the mission. Just we all know. We didn't do anything wrong. I got back in December. He got back in January. I had gotten to know him as a missionary. We both did. And it was just kind of a cool way to see someone in that atmosphere, in that environment, where you see them as a person, as a missionary, their testimony, their work ethic, who they are. And of course, there's attraction. That doesn't shut off completely when you're missionaries. I think we talked about it. There was a mutual attraction. We just didn't say it or act on it, right?
Right.
But anyway, long story short, I was very impressed with him, and I will admit that I called him first when I knew he was home, and I gave him a call, and the rest is history. Our first big date was Colin Ray concert.
Yeah.
And so that's fun. Our song is One Boy, One Girl, if you're familiar
Oh, wow.
with that.
Yeah.
And And it's ironic too. So the song says something about twins. They have twins, but it's one boy, one girl, twins. Well, we ended up having twins. It's just identical girls. So that part of the song didn't come true. But anyway,
Wow.
but yeah, we knew pretty quick. The dating and courtship happened pretty quick from the time he got home till we had our wedding date set for June 21st of 95. And that's where this kind of starts. We were on June 21st. My cousin got married down in Salt Lake at the Salt Lake Temple, and he had to work that day, but I went with my family to the wedding and then came back, picked him up in her reception. She's from Cokeville. And so we were headed to Cokeville. Their reception was there that evening. So I had all my my grandparents, aunts, uncles, my parents, several siblings that were in Salt Lake that day that are all traveling then to Cokeville, Wyoming. Now, rewinding just a little bit, into high school, like dating years when you start thinking about future marriage, those kinds of things, I started getting, people will use different words, but a premonition, a thought, a feeling that something was going to happen to me before I got married.
Wow.
I mean, pretty broad information, like that can mean anything, right? It's
Yeah.
like, bad, good. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Right? But I felt it was a warning of sorts and just to be careful. And so I thought about that a lot. And so when we started getting more serious, I told him that and that we needed to be careful. We needed to obey laws and not take any risks and always wear our seatbelts and all the things. If something was going to happen, I guess it was going to happen anyway, but I just was wanting to be prepared for whatever that was. And I do believe those things that we get, those feelings, those premonitions, are from the spirit as a warning, even though we don't really know what's going to happen. I think our spirits are prepared. We know. I truly believe we knew what we were going to go through before we got here. That we volunteered for things. And I laugh because, some people, when I found out I was pregnant with twins after all of this, I'm kind of skipping around, but people are like, what? After everything you've been through? I'm like, right, it's hard, but a friend of mine was like, I don't know what line you were in the pre-existence. Like a buffet, I guess. Like, I'll take a little of that, a little of that. Oh, give me some of that, give me some of that. She's like, I'm glad I wasn't in line behind you. You were just taking all the things. And I mean, I say that jokingly because definitely people have been through way harder things than I have, but it's just funny that after everything, I get pregnant with twins, which I wanted before I got hurt because it would go with the song and one boy, one girl, the romantic part of me. Well, we don't get to pick. Sometimes we don't get to pick, right? But I think Heavenly Father has a sense of humor.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe you should try that. So anyway, going back to that premonition, told him, we just need to be careful. And so we always wore our seatbelts, except that day.
Wow.
And it's not like we consciously said, hey, let's choose not to wear our seatbelts today and just test it out. Let's see what happens, right? Nobody does that. We just didn't. And there are consequences, right? So it's just one of those things that you have regrets and there's nothing you can do about it. Can't go back and change it now, but learn from it moving forward. And so I guarantee you our seatbelts are on
Yeah.
every time we get in the car now and our children. So we get on our way. We were kind of in a hurry, not speeding, but we needed to get there after Cole got off work just to get there in time. And if you're familiar with the area, just from here in Cokeville to Cokeville, it's across from Utah into Wyoming, obviously, and you go up, cross the border into Evanston, Wyoming, cross back into Utah, into Ridge County, Utah, and then back into Wyoming to Cokeville. And so we go through Evanston. It's about halfway there. We usually stop at the Maverick. Who doesn't love to stop at the Maverick and get a drink or whatever? But we didn't. We're in a little bit of a hurry. And I was asleep. The car he had was a little white 4-door Geo Prism, bucket seats. I was reclined all the way in my seat. And that's one of the things I will say and do a lot with my safety assemblies and things, that it isn't safe. And if you want some really exciting reading, pull out your manual out of the glove box, and there it is right there. Don't recline while the car is moving. But I did. I was reclined. Now, also, the seat belts in that car, which they don't make anymore, this kind, is when you shut the door, that automatic shoulder harness would slide up
Oh, yeah.
in front of you, but you had to manually do up your lap belt.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's kind of a false sense of security with those. And I think that's why they stopped making them. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, my seatbelt's on.
I remember those. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it did slide up, but I was also reclined. So I'm laying clear back with that seatbelt clear up ahead of me. It wasn't going to do anything if even if I was sitting out, who knows. But as we went along there, he passed through Emmitston thinking, should we stop? No. And I'm asleep. He's like, well, just keep going. We talked about this before, so don't feel like I'm like throwing him under the bus or anything. But he had a feeling to reach over and do it my lap belt and do it. And in our humanness, sometimes we ignore these brilliant. And, I've never blamed him I've made several of my own mistakes, so I'm not going to
Right.
blame him. It's just a learning experience to really listen, right? So even when you're in a hurry, just stop and take the time to listen. So yeah, we kept on our way about 15, 20 minutes outside of Emmitston. It's just a little 2-lane highway, middle of nowhere, sagebrush for miles. We had crossed just back out of Wyoming into Utah. And he looked down at me for a split second, just glanced down as I was asleep. And in that second, the road curved. And so he went off the side of the road a little, as he wasn't totally paying attention to turning with the curve. And it was a gravel shoulder. So that loud gravel noise with the wheels obviously woke me up. I remember sitting up and being startled and like, where are we? What, kind of that, what's happening? What's going on? And he overcorrected into the opposite lane. And I remember grabbing his arm and yelling, watch out, because I saw a car coming for us, but I wasn't awake enough or alert enough to really think it's far enough away. We have plenty of time to just slowly get back into our own lane. Everything would have been fine. But because there's that startle and that fear and that, time in a split second, that when I grab his arm, yell, watch out, that scared him. Again, he overcorrects again.
Oh, wow.
Off the side of the road, there was like a little wash ditch, dry ditch off the side of the road there. And it was and we almost hit the 1 mile marker on the Utah side. We had just come back out of Wyoming into Utah, 1 mile in. And that it literally marks the spot where we crashed, and we pass it every time we travel to Cokeville. So it's there, and it's always going to be there. We won't ever have to look for the spot. Now, where was it? It was about right in here somewhere. There it is. So we went off. I don't remember. After he yelled, watch out, and he pulled that wheel, I don't remember. So I don't know what happened. I don't know what I hit. If I passed out from fear, if I got knocked out, I don't know. But we went off the side of the road, rolled one time, landed on the wheels. And the next thing I remember is trying to breathe and having a hard time breathing and trying to open my eyes, and they were hurting. And just where we roll was this red clay, and it was June 21st, first day of summer. It was quite dry, and this red clay dirt had, just poofed up everywhere, just all over. And it had knocked out, I didn't listen at the time, but it had knocked out all the glass on the passenger side and the back windows. So all this dirt is just everywhere. I remember just trying to breathe, trying to wake up, trying to see what was happening, trying to make sense of it. And I could finally open my eyes enough, and the dirt settled enough that I could see my feet in the seat where I used to be sitting. So my feet, and then I was literally just laid diagonally with my feet up in the seat where I was between the bucket seats on my back with my head and body torso behind the passenger seat, if you can picture what I'm saying. And so, there's my feet up the front seat. I'm trying to breathe. I'm trying to open my eyes. I had contacts. So the dirt in the contacts, right, just wasn't working well. So I could see my feet, but I couldn't feel them. I couldn't move them. I could tell something was wrong. And I was still actually a bit confused, if you can imagine.
Yeah.
I just really didn't know exactly what happened. And so I was scared. And this is kind of hard to explain. And maybe you felt this, but fear, I know a lot of times you say fear and faith cannot coexist, but actually in this way, I believe it can. I had a lot of faith, but I was scared at the moment because I wasn't sure what was happening, right? And at the same time, I almost felt just a peace from the spirit. And so it was very back and forth, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I knew something was wrong, but I also just felt like it would be okay. And so about the same time I'm seeing my feet, he miraculously, and I didn't know this at the time, right? I didn't know, he had stayed in his seat. He had held on to the steering wheel. He remembers the car rolling. He remembers hitting the roof as it rolled and then landing back in his seat. And so as that settled, his experience of that same time frame was he's waiting for the dirt. He's calling my name. I could hear him calling my name, but I didn't know where from. He then eventually could see my feet when it settled. So he gets out of the car, comes back to the back door, opens it, kneels down by me there in the back seat, at least knew enough not to move me or try to get me out of the car. It's not like the roof wasn't smashed down or anything. I wasn't trapped per se. It wasn't like emergency enough, like the car might blow up or something where we just get someone out. And he knew just to be still. And he actually just put both hands on the side of my head. And I remember looking up and seeing his face and kind of realizing, but also I had been asleep and I was kind of confused. I remember saying, "Tell me this is a dream."
Oh.
And he said, "No, this is real." And I said, "Okay, then pray." That was first. So he began to pray for help. We're in the middle of nowhere. There was that car coming for us, but I don't know if they passed us fast enough that they didn't actually see us roll. I don't know about that car, but I do know that in 1996, we didn't have cell phones. Well, there were the bricks. Remember the bricks?
Yeah.
The good old-fashioned dinosaur phones, but they were expensive. We didn't have one. And as he prayed, within just a few short seconds, a car came up on the scene. They had a phone.
Wow.
And so when we talk about this miracle, this umbrella of this big miracle, there's just little ones all along the way that make up the whole miracle, right? That just build on each other. And so that was a miracle that somebody had a phone. I mean, who knows how long we would have had to wait if they came upon the scene, didn't have one, would have had to drive clear to Evanston, find help, get them back, so just such a miracle at a time when the phones just weren't that common. So that was the first miracle. The next one was he calls for help, and we later find out that the first EMT on the scene was the bishop of the Woodruff, Utah ward. Woodruff and Randolph, Rich County, are both really small as well. And he was an EMT on call, volunteer EMT. He was on call that day. We find out later as he told us his experience, that he was on his way, just leaving town with his brothers to go hunting. I mean, that's a big deal.
Right.
And he was on call. He gets the call and debates whether or not to take it. And then the spirit was like, you take this. So he turns around. I don't know what he did with his brothers, whatever, but he took the call and he was the first EMT on scene.
Wow.
And he told us that he felt very guided. Where to move me, not move me, where to place his hands, how to help, what to do. And that coming upon that scene, that the spirit was really strong.
Mm.
And I don't know what people experience in other accidents, right? I just know my own. And I'm not saying that we were more special than other people, that the spirit would be at our accident any differently than anybody else's. I don't know what they've experienced, just mine. And that was really strong for him. We also had the insurance adjuster that went out to take pictures for the car insurance, told them they felt the spirit. I mean, it's just crazy. I remember just bits and pieces kind of being in and out of consciousness. I don't feel like I was unconscious. I feel like I kind of just kept falling asleep.
Mm.
I don't know what the difference is between that and maybe just totally losing consciousness. They did use the jaws of life to cut the top of the car off, even though it wasn't really smashed. They needed just it open so that they could lift me straight out without maneuvering me through the door, kind of thing. It just made it. I mean, the car was already crashed. There was no, ruining it more wasn't going to do anything.
Right.
So they did that. I remember the noise, the loud noise of them sawing that off. I don't necessarily remember getting out of the car, but the next thing I do remember is being in the back of an ambulance, and they put me there. I didn't know. I'm sure they told me, but I don't know, that I was there waiting for airmen. They had called airmen from the University of Utah. And so I'm in there. I don't remember where Cole was at the time. I don't think he was in there. In fact, no, he wasn't. But, and during that time, they're telling Cole, he's like, how do I get back to the hospital? And they said, well, we can drive you back to Evanston. You can call your parents. They can come get you. I mean, it was going to be a process. Well, remember I said all my family and everybody had been to the wedding that day. They were also all traveling back the same route to get to Cokeville. My mom was sick with breast cancer at the end of my mission. And being from Cokeville, there's not doctors, hospitals, and stuff there. So her oncologist and all of that was down in Provo in Utah County. After the wedding, which was earlier in the day, she had an appointment with her oncologist. They went down from Salt Lake down to Utah County, did her appointment. So they were also later getting back to Cokeville because of that. Well, Cole is praying in this emergency vehicle of help, of what do I do? How do I, and he looks up and they had stopped traffic going both ways so that the helicopter had a place to land on the road. And so there's this line of traffic. He looks up the road and he sees my parents' car.
Oh, wow.
It says to the EMT, you need to go stop that car. It's her parents. Well, at the same time, as my parents are coming onto the scene and they see this line of cars and they see a white car in the barrel pit,
Oh,
my mom recognized it and said, that's Cole and Abby. Anyway, so they surpassed. They didn't wait for anybody to come get them. Drive around, surpass the line of cars, come up. So I didn't know all of this was happening. But the next thing I know, as I'm laying in the ambulance, unaware, I open my eyes for a brief second to see my dad come into the ambulance and give me a blessing. It was short, sweet, to the point, and I also don't blame Cole for not thinking to give me a blessing. He was in shock.
yes.
He did some praying, it was all good. It was also happened to be my dad's 50th birthday that day.
Wow.
I know. So happy birthday, Dad. Here's a gift for you. Let me just crash on your birthday and break my neck. Just the timing of things and things you just,
Mm.
I mean, you can say it's a coincidence. People will say it's a coincidence. I just, yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've watched the Cokeville Miracle,
Yeah.
but I love that the dad that they kind of center the story around the sheriff
Oh,
who
yeah.
has
Yeah.
kids in school. And he says the line, it's too much of a coincidence to be a
Yeah.
coincidence.
Mm. For
So
sure.
I love that. And I believe it. Then the next miracle is because my mom and dad are there, Cole can now get in the car with them and they just head back as fast as they can to Salt Lake. Stopped in Evanston long enough to use the payphone. Remember payphones? That's how old we are, right?
Yep.
Used the payphone, called his parents to let them know what had happened. They, being from here in Kaysville, and it's just about 20 minutes to Salt Lake, immediately head to Salt Lake. They got to the hospital about the same time as airmen.
Wow.
So they obviously beat, it was another hour from Evanston to Salt Lake for my parents and Cole to get there. Of course, again, I'm oblivious to all of this. This is all, I learned this all afterwards, right? And how all this fell into play. But the next thing I know, I'm waking up in critical care. They had taken me to the emergency room. They got me stabilized. I do not remember any of that. I remember a couple of brief moments on the airmat, on the helicopter. I remember just being sick to my stomach and saying I was going to throw up. And of course, I'm flat and tied to a backboard keeping me. And so they literally just tilt the whole thing. I remember that so I could throw up. Sorry. And I also remember I said I had contacts and my eyes are just full of dirt. They had some little tool that they could suction your contacts out of your eyes. So I remember just being there and seeing this little tool take my contacts out of my eyes. That's about all I remember. Fun helicopter ride, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, the next thing I know, I'm waking up hooked to all the machines. No idea what had just happened, but before I even woke up, told Cole, my family, his family, that I had broken my neck at the level of C3-4. So cervical spine, third and fourth vertebrae down from the top. So really high. And right here, it's even with your jawline. Another miracle is that I did breathe on my own on the helicopter until I got to the hospital. That's when they intubated, put the tubes down my throat, hooked me to the ventilator because I was starting to struggle to breathe. And so they didn't want me to use my energy trying to breathe and just make sure I was okay. So then I wake up with tubes in my mouth. I can't talk. I have no idea what I'm hooked to, but they put what's called traction. I think more common, you'll see the halo, right? It's kind of this big brace, has big metal things with a thing that screws into the neck and it like keeps your head and neck still. So a lot of times people that break their neck, they go full halo like that. I did not have to have that, but I had what they called traction, and it's just kind of this horseshoe thing screwed into my head with a rope it took 45 pounds of traction to pull my neck back into alignment.
Whoa.
I know. So I didn't know that had all been going. I don't know. It was crazy. So, but they told my family I broke at that level, C3-4, that I was a complete quadriplegic. Also, no idea how spinal cord injuries work or how they're, labeled or whatever, but complete. They said it was complete, meaning spinal cord severed. No hope of reconnection. Incomplete means it's either just pinched or just not all the way disconnected. So there's room for some reconnection there. Well, they said complete.
Well,
So however they read all the x-rays and CTs and whatever else they did, that's what they saw. And
wow.
completely quadriplegic, neck down. She'll never walk, move her body. She'll never feel. She'll be ventilator dependent. She makes it out of the hospital. She might end up in full care, some kind of an assisted full care place. And then probably die in a few short years because without spinal cord, your body just stops functioning. I mean, it was not great prognosis at all. Um, so that's what they told me when I woke up, but I think I kind of ignored them. I mean, I guess that's denial, or I don't know what you want to call it, but I'm like, no. And I don't think anybody's going to lay there and be like, oh, okay, great. I accept that prognosis. Right. But I was very injured. I'm sure I was on some drugs and whatever to keep me comfortable and things. But I do remember thinking, wow. But I had faith that it would be okay. I just thought, no, I will walk. I'll walk. And so from there, I was in critical care for 2 weeks. So not very long for telling me, it's going to be she's very critical. She might die. But then only 2 weeks in critical care. Yeah. So there's the very long story of what happened. Now, to kind of speed all that up, I was in the hospital from critical care, moved to rehab. And I was in the hospital a total of 3 months. I had just lots of more little miracles in 3 months that I started getting feeling back. And I can tell you a little bit more of that if you want. But feeling and, after they did one of my first surgeries, they went ahead and took the tubes out of my mouth, did the trach. So you can see my really cool scar here.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And I was only on that for 6 weeks. So I ended up breathing on my own about halfway through the hospital stay. All the different tubes and things, eventually I got off all the tubes. I had a stomach tube feeding me. I had not just an IV, PICC line, that's what it's called. And that ended up getting infected at one point. So they had to take that out because that's dangerous. That goes right to your heart. Well, anyway, just over time. And we prayed so much. I had several priesthood blessings. Like I said, my dad, they're in the ambulance. Cole gave me a couple, one before my main surgery. I had the first surgery in the front. I had another surgery in the back. I've got all kinds of scars and all the things. I've got a really strong neck now. So it's C3, C4. It's all fused together with lots of metal, holding it all together in there. And just with time, and they said, with spinal cord, you cannot say what will and will not come back. It's not cut and dried. It's not black and white. And as things, they're like, if something starts to move, we can strengthen it, but we can't make something move. So there are just lots of things that happened in that 3 months. Like I said, and 3 months doesn't seem like a long time, but when you're in a hospital bed, it does. So, yeah, and I got feeling back. I got movement back. It started out on my left side, my right side, not so much. And so if you see me now, which you've seen me in person and walking, I don't walk super great. I have a limp. My right leg doesn't really like to cooperate. Kind of drags a little. My right arm doesn't really work. I've got, some shoulder and my bicep a little bit. I also have a fun, stupid human trick with it. So it's just kind of stuck like this most of the time. But it does this. If I bump it just right or hit my palm that's hypersensitive now, it shakes. My kids, when they were little, thought that was a pretty fun toy. They still do, actually. They're adults and they all think it's so funny to play with. But yeah, and so a lot of times medical people especially will see me and assume it's a stroke because it's just down my right side.
Oh.
that the return didn't come. But I wasn't supposed to move, walk, breathe, or anything.
Mm-mm.
So if you can say it's a coincidence, but to me, it's a miracle for sure.
Absolutely.
And I did walk out of the hospital
That's amazing.
with help. I didn't just get up and jog out.
No.
I have some videos of
Phenomenal.
that.
Just in 3 months, you're able to walk again. That's insane.
Yeah. And I took my first steps a week before I got out of the hospital. So from June 21st to September 13th, Friday the 13th is when I got out. So I like Friday the 13th. Some people, it's like, ooh, superstitious. But it's a good superstitious to us. So
So you were able to still get married?
yeah. So yeah, 3 months in the hospital, then lots of physical therapy. And my goal was to not have to be in the wheelchair to get married. I didn't want to have wedding pictures in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
I
And
know
your
that.
wedding pictures are beautiful, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm like, wow, what a beautiful couple.
Yeah. We were a lot younger. Oh, you do that
Weren't
too.
we
You
all?
look at your picture. Oh my word, what happened? The goal was, like I said, to not be in the wheelchair. As time went on, kind of in the hospital, they're like, of course, you're not getting married next week. So when do you think you want to reset the date? And at that point, I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be a walk in the park. No pun intended. And I'll be fine. But no one ever really was very negative. Like, no, that can't happen. They just let me be positive and think positively, because that's one of the main things that I share with people going through adversity. I could have laid there and they said I'd never walk, so I guess I'll just lay here and not try.
Right.
Why, I could have done the blame game. Why did God do this to me? Why? I could have gone really bitter. But because of that faith and seeing a miracle before, like I talked about in our little town and others, I knew. And I didn't know what that would look like. I hope, and I visualized me walking again, running, doing all the things, full, normal, full recovery, right? Because I was a dancer. I was a singer, dancer, performer. I was a musical theater major at BYU before my mission. I was just very active. I played sports in high school. I was a cheerleader. I was drill team. I'm in small town. You get to do all the things.
Yes, it's true.
So I did all of the things, and all of a sudden I couldn't do any of it. And in fact, even singing, when I had the tubes in my mouth, I couldn't even talk. Then with the trach, you still can't your voice doesn't work because air isn't passing your vocal cords. You can mouth words. So then I was mouthing words until I could wean off the ventilator. And then my voice was weak because I hadn't used it, just like any other muscle. I hadn't used it for 6 weeks and had to do therapy for that. But I knew from the beginning, even though it's not like every single day I'm like positive and happy, and I absolutely had all the human moments of crying and frustration and why, like, when. That was my husband's biggest question. We had the faith that it was going to happen. It was just more like when, you kind of want the end from the beginning. And I tease him because he's very much with movies. If I've seen it before, he's like, okay, what happens? What happens? I'm like, I'm not telling you. He has to know the end from the beginning. And so that was a struggle for him. It was not if, but when. How long is this going to take? But that constant just faith and praying every day, every night. He came to the hospital every day, every single day. And when he would leave at night, he would pray, and then he would say, show me something new tomorrow. So it was that positive mindset of just forward progression and doing everything I could. Obviously, I had no control of what was going to heal or come back. But if there was something, I chose to work and focus on it and do everything I could to get more back and stronger and all the things. And there was also the component of focusing on the good. So gratitude is huge to me in our trials. And again, if I was just negative and laying there and nothing's going to happen and I lost all my hope and all my faith, then nothing is going to happen. Faith precedes the miracle. And And I will, let me just disclaimer there too. Obviously, there are so many people that go through horrible things, pray for that miracle, and don't get the one they're praying for. They don't get the healing. You know what I'm saying? And I love the talk by Elder Bednar. I don't remember how long ago it was, but having the faith not to be healed.
Mhm.
Sometimes the miracle, as hard as that is for us to accept as humans, as mortals, is that we don't.
Mm.
And I'm struggling with that with some other health issues that I've had forever, that I'm like, I would be a complete quadriplegic if I could just have this one little health thing that I've been working on forever. So I go back and forth with that. It's a struggle. It's a battle. But I do have faith that in his will. And I realized I kind of left you hanging on the whole wedding thing when my mom first asked, when do you want to reset the date? I mean, this is June, right? I'm like, how about August? And they're like, okay, sure, let's shoot for August. Shoot for the stars, right? Got to go big or go home. August is coming up. I'm still in the hospital. Okay, looks like maybe August isn't going to work. What next? So I'm like, November. Okay, let's shoot for November. Anyway, we did that several times until I realized, it's September. I'm getting out of the hospital. I'm still really weak. I have a lot of physical therapy to do. So, we just went for the following May. My goal was to get before the year anniversary and not in June. June was out. We didn't want June anymore. No more June. Yeah. So it had to be by May. And so it ended up being May 22nd of 97. So 11 months and 1 day from June 21st to May 22nd.
Right.
And gosh, there's so much. There's so much to this. That's why I'm writing a book. And I say it, and my husband teases me because I've been working on the book for like 10 years. It's so hard. So I am going to finish that book. And I say it so I have accountability, right?
But yeah, we're cheering you on.
There was just a lot to that, to the wedding, to being ready to do that without a wheelchair, and all the healing that had to come with that, and the work and the physical therapy. And I will say a big part of that was when I was still in critical care, we got a call, and call comes in and says, Elder Holland's secretary just called.
Whoa.
Right? So this is 96, remember? He got put in 94 as an apostle.
Okay.
So he was new. And our understanding is that Cole's state president at the time worked out with him.
Mm.
Anyway, he heard about us through his state president and called the hospital. Now, this was a huge answer to prayer. And not that I didn't have faith in the power of the priesthood of the blessings that my dad had given, Cole had given, but I visualized the Savior as we have learned about him in the scriptures, seen him depicted on different videos and films as he walked the earth and went about healing and laying his hands on people, commanding them to walk. And I knew that could be me. So when he came in and said, we had this call, I was so excited. And long story short, he and his wife came, and this is so tender because he just passed. I met her, but I never really talked about it. They both came, and I remember him being there. I remember her being there. But again, I had been in critical for 2 weeks. I had just moved to rehab, so I was still pretty, not necessarily sick, but I was still pretty freshly injured with lots of things going on, right? And sleeping and trying to heal. But I remember them coming, and he gave me a blessing.
Wow.
And Sister Holland told my mom that was the most powerful blessing she'd ever heard him give.
Wow. Wow.
And
What an
everybody,
honor.
Yeah. And the reason I share that is because as I was talking about healing and accepting different levels of healing or even having the faith not to be healed, something he said in the blessing taught me so much. And it's not like something I had never heard. It wasn't new information. It just in this situation hit harder. And that is, as he talked and expressed our desires, he basically taught that we are to come to him with our desires, let him know what we want. And then he said what we want, but he ended it with, but thy will be done. So sometimes what we want, our will, isn't our Father's will.
Yeah.
My will was to be completely healed, running
Right.
around, dancing, doing all the things. And what he said was that nothing negative would be remembered from this experience or felt. Nothing negative would influence this experience, only the good. So that is so true. I remember saying I was in pain, but I don't remember what it felt like.
Wow.
I remember being sad and frustrated, but the good and the positive and the faith and the hope and all of that just way outweighed all of that negative that the adversary can have that influence on us to just bring us down. And so it was just a strong lesson and one that I have to remind myself. It's not like one and done. You hear it and like, oh, I got it. I can just be good with Heavenly Father's will for whatever comes. Like everything that happens to us or that we struggle with and we pray for, and when it doesn't get answered the way we think it should be, having faith that it's His will is just a hard thing to do. But it's what we've tried to continually do.
I wonder if any of our listeners might be wondering if where you were just engaged and faced with this hardship of you might never walk again, you have this short lifespan, you might have to be changing tubes all the time and all this stuff. If your fiance ever thought like, whoa, this is too much, I'm out.
That is a good question, and we get asked that a lot. And I know that a lot of people's experiences like this, even, illnesses, cancer diagnoses, any kind of debilitating anything can really take a toll on a marriage, a relationship for those reasons, right? It's a lot. And all of a sudden, I'm not the same person physically that I was before. But you know what? We actually never, I never felt he was going to leave. And he never thought about leaving.
Awesome.
The thought never crossed his mind, never crossed my mind. I knew he'd be there. I had learned that about him, like I said, is watching him be a missionary and
Yeah.
just knowing. And again, I know people who have hurt, they've left, divorced over a child's death, over illnesses, over a myriad of trials that really put a strain, right, on that relationship. And so, yeah, it was never anything that we thought would happen. And we also had the faith that I wouldn't actually end up in that full care place,
Yeah.
needing all that care. And that is, when I got out, I was walking, I was breathing, I could do most things on my own. I still needed help and still do need help with some things. A little TMI, but I challenge anybody to do up a brow with one hand, like
Right.
it is no, I've tried everything. I promise. If people are like, oh, I know I can help you do that. No, promise in 30 years. And can you believe we're coming up on 30 years this June that it happened? And I promise there's no way to do up a regular brow with one hand. So yes, I have to have help with some things, and that's okay. And
It is okay.
and
Well, we all are going to have a trial of some kind. We're all going to have our car accident, in life sooner or later.
yeah,
And so it showed his character right away that he was going to stick with you no matter what. So I love that.
yes, and it also doesn't mean we're perfect, and
Right.
we've had our struggles. There may have been sometimes in our marriage that it could have gone either direction. Like, it's a lot, right?
Yeah.
But we've worked through it. We've kept our faith. We've pushed through. We've had ups and downs just like everybody else.
Mm.
Just like everybody else. I always just hesitate when people are like, "Oh, you guys are so cute and you've done so much of this perfect marriage and you're la 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 la." And I'm like, "Nope, nope, 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 nope. Don't put us on a pedestal because we have got a long way to fall off. We are not perfect. Our kids aren't perfect. I mean, pretty close, but and I mean that just is a whole. I mean, that's a whole other thing. I end up having 4 kids under the age of 4 with
Oh,
one good arm.
yeah.
There was no math being done. Nobody did the math. Heavenly Father didn't do the math. He thought it was funny. Yeah, I found out I was pregnant just before he turned 4. My daughter was not quite 2. I found out it was twins. They're 2 years apart. Well, they were 6 weeks early, and were
Wow.
miracles. They were tiny, but they were only in the NICU for a couple weeks. Came home.
Wow.
So I mean, it's just, like I said, it's this umbrella and this great big miracle that just continues to have little tender mercies and miracles all along the way. And I'm assuming there will be more. I just don't think it ever ends, right?
Yeah.
And our trials never end either, you know?
Yeah. So you've been so great to face your trials with humor and joy. Do you want to give us any more advice on how to do that?
Yeah, I think I already talked about 2 is the gratitude
Yes.
and positive thinking. And then humor is my third. These are my 3 keys to finding joy in adversity. I mean, humor is a big deal and we have to learn to laugh. And I know there are some really emotional, sad times that aren't going to be appropriate to laugh. But even I'm laying in a hospital bed, not able to move or do anything on my own, the nurses have to wash my face and comb my hair. And then I had to go on a shower chair and be wheeled into the shower and they would squeeze the ambu bag and help me breathe. I mean, it was just like this whole process. But I had to have help with so much. And eating, when I could finally get the feeding tube out on my stomach and then I could eat solid foods, I couldn't lift at that point for a while my own food to my mouth. So someone would feed me. And anyway, Cole's a jokester. He's a tease. And, he'd wash my face and then he'd throw the towel over my face and say, "Wipe your face." I can't get it. He didn't leave it there long enough for me to not breathe. It was just funny, right? Like, I had to find a way to lighten up what could normally be you could just cry every day that I couldn't do it myself, you know?
Right.
And so we did just funny things like that. He teased a lot. We joke a lot about my disability. We laugh. You have to find that because really, if you don't, you could cry all the time. And I love one of my favorite quotes from Sister Hinckley is, I might get this just a little off, but she said, "Life is hard and that you could cry all the time." She said, "But I prefer to laugh because crying gives me a headache."
There you go.
Right.
I love
How many times have we cried so hard we end up with the cry hangover headache, right?
it. Love that. So funny.
Yeah, so funny. So you just have to find a way. And even, we're coming up on the year anniversary of my mom passing on March 20th. And even when it happened, I mean, we were somewhat prepared for it. She had a stroke that wasn't recoverable. So she passed. But even in that time, again, my family were probably a little irreverent sometimes, but sarcastic, and we laughed. So we chose to just tell funny stories about her. And you can, yes, it's okay to grieve. Absolutely. We need to grieve, but you can still find humor. You can find humor in anything. Make sure it's appropriate. Make sure that whoever you're laughing with or about is on board, right?
So that reminds me of a book I've been reading. I read it a while ago and I'm rereading it now. It was President Nelson's book, Heart of the Matter. And it's about what he learned over 100 years of his life. And he has a quote in there from Eliza R. Snow that says, "Saints can be happy under every circumstance." And she was talking about, the hard time of her life as a pioneer. And then he goes on saying, we can feel joy even while having a bad day, a bad week, or a bad year. The joy we feel has little to do with the
With the
circumstances
circumstances of our
of our
lives
life and
and
everything
everything
to
to
do with the
do with the
focus
focus
of
of
our
our
lives.
lives. I love it. It's my favorite quote. I'm glad you
Yes.
did that.
Yeah, and so that just reminds me of what you're saying, and so
I'm glad you shared that. That is so perfect because I was actually going to share that at the
really,
end here. So look at us on the same
what
wavelength.
and choose.
Yes. And he actually, the first time he said that was in a talk several
Yes,
years ago before he was a prophet, right?
that's what I love about this book, is a lot of it is pieces of his talks, but then
What?
he expounds a lot on those concepts that he had in the talks, and I just love this book. So like I said, it's the second time I read it, and I just love it.
I'll need to read that then. Because, yeah, that is one of my favorite quotes. I share it everywhere I go in a lot of places to a lot of people. And that is it. It goes back to what I was saying. Instead of focusing on, I'm broken, I'm paralyzed, whatever your case may be, I'm this, I'm hurt, I'm sad, all the different trials, what we focus on grows. I don't
Absolutely.
know about you, but it's like when I was pregnant, I noticed all the pregnant ladies. When
Yeah,
I had all these little kids, I noticed all the families with little kids. What we're focusing on is what we have all around us, and it grows. And so when he's saying the joy we feel has little to do with the circumstances, it's not about what phase of life we're in,
yeah.
what trial we're under, what we're facing. It's about what we focus on.
I heard this concept is like our brains are like social media algorithms. The more you focus on and tell it, your brain that you want to learn about or focus on, your brain will say, oh, that's what you want to learn about. That's what you want to see more. That's what I'm going to show you more and prove that that is true. If you're saying the world is great and wonderful, then your brain is going to look for more wonderful, good things. If you're just complaining all the time, you're actually rewiring your brain to look for negative things when you're just complaining and look at negative. So you could actually rewire your brain to look for positive or negative based on what you focus on more and what you
Yes,
are doing.
yes, I 100% agree.
Mhm.
Yeah. So as we focus on faith, the Savior, I mean, when he gave that talk, it was focusing on the Savior. When we focus on the Savior, when we focus on good things, when we have the gratitude, when we're trying to see past the trial, yeah, it's hard and you still have to experience certain things, but it's that the joy comes, like he said, not from the circumstance, but from what we're focused on. And it will, and sometimes they're harder than others to find it and really dig deep to focus on something when something's really weighing on us and is really difficult, but it can be done. And I 100% believe that. And I love that quote. I'm so glad you shared that. So, yeah,
Yeah. Awesome.
it's so true.
Yeah. So I have loved talking to you so much. Is there one final thought, like one message if anyone could take away just one thing from your story that you'd want them to make sure they took away?
So, that we just talked
Yeah.
about, that
They
we
will.
can find joy despite our circumstances. But I also like to make sure that people don't compare. Don't compare our trials. A lot of times I kind of feel a little survivor's guilt or something, especially if I talk to someone who has a spinal cord injury and they're still in the wheelchair. I've met several, and
Yeah.
I feel guilty that why was I healed from an even higher level of spinal cord injury? Some it's their back and they're still paralyzed from the waist down, whatever. And it's not to say that my faith was greater. They
No.
may have had the same amount or even more faith, but again, the will of God comes into play. But I think a lot of times we do compare our lives and our trials to others and think life's not fair. Like, why do they get all that? Why are they so successful? Why were they healed? Why do they have that great big house? Why, and we compare ourselves. And I just want to say our trials and miracles don't come in this pretty package all tied up with a pretty bow, right? They're not cut and dried. Here's the miracle. Comparison is the thief of joy. But if we can look at the good of each situation, like we were just saying, and seeing what good did come of their trial, ask them, if they're open to that conversation. But knowing If you're watching this and thinking, well, I knew somebody that was paralyzed and they weren't healed, step back and just wonder maybe what their path in life needed to be that looked a little different than being able to walk again, or you know what I mean? But we can always learn from other people's experiences. There's room for growth all the time. Miracles could continue. Like I said, I feel like I'm still under this umbrella, and little miracles are still coming, and they
Mhm.
will continue. And we can all experience that with that focus and making sure we're comparing our
Yep.
trials.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's been a joy. I feel like I could talk to you all night.
I know. I could talk for another 3 hours. Nobody's got time for that. So that's why I'll write a book. I'll get that book
Yes,
finished.
please, please. We will be watching you and cheering you on, and we'll be excited for your book.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Latter-day Miracles. If you have a miracle story that you feel inspired to share, we'd love to hear from you. Contact us on our website at latterdaymiracles.net or message us on social media.
Until next time, keep your heart open to the miraculous, and may you feel the presence of angels in your everyday life.